In traditional planning, we do a deterministic analysis. We just look at the contingencies, look at make sure that we're in compliance with the TPL standards and the utility standards. There are some contingencies like the overlapping doubles that may not be considered because near TPL 1005 A do not require you to make the system secure for those. And that's the way traditionally the system was planned. Now what we're doing and moving towards, and you saw the magnitude hydro example, is including the probabilistic assessment. In other words, the impact of your decisions in investing in the system in the quality of service that the customers receive. So in this example, I'm going to be using a data center, and we're going to be analyzing it from an economic point of view. So what is the situation? The utility had a technology park where they had about 523, call it 500 megawatts of generation that must not be affected by the addition of this new large data center, which is 1.3 gigawatts. And it's going to be modeled. The entire substation is basically flat load. So we don't need to worry about, in this case, of what we call the low duration curve. And the concept there is that if on a system you have the load that varies over time, then you're looking at two events to happen simultaneously. The fault occurs, the overloading occurs, the need to shed load occurs, together with the load being at that level. So typically, this type of analysis are being done with a low duration curve. So we have the energy not served at the peak, at several intermediate levels, and at the valley. But in this case, to keep it simpler, it's a flat 8760 load. And the data center is adding also 850 megawatt storage, and that's a given decision, so that's being modeled. And it informed us that their cost of energy not served is $17 per kilowatt hour, a very high value. Alternatively, and this we have also done with other studies, we start with the cost of local supply, which can also be fairly high. So local supply may be installing a large turbines on site, adding more storage. But in general, the concept here is that we're going to be comparing the building or expanding the system versus the option of not expanding the system, but incurring into this cost. In this sense, it's very much aligned with what Megan just presented. And the overall idea is then identifying what reinforcement would make sense, would make most economic sense. Just to give you an overview of how the system looked like, this just a screenshot of the near area of the technology park, which is down here. You're seeing my mouth, right? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. This is the technology park. There is one line that is called the line 171 that was found to be, or will be seen that it's behind most of the load shedding needs at the data center. But also there is a generating plant fairly close to this data center that also affects the, or also results in needs to interrupt load at the data center or supplied locally, which also used to be a big concern in the past whenever we were doing these reliability assessments, which is the input data. If you don't have good input data, then your results are suspect at best. And one critical input data is the frequency of failure of all of the elements in your network and the repair time. And that's where this link that we're doing between our tool, which calculates the probability of failure with Copperleaf, it's fundamental because we're getting from Copperleaf asset, which looks at the performance, the actual performance of the assets in the network, what they call the PRB files. The PRB files tell us what's the frequency of failure of this asset, how long it takes to be repaired. And more interestingly, it gives us over time, as the asset ages, the probability of failure increases. So it provides us that data that before we were using typical industry standards, trying to look at the IEEE to see what we can get. But that's one game changer for us in this type of analysis, that the input data on the reliability is a lot more trustable, for not to use the word reliable. Then, as all analysis, we start with the benchmark, the current situation. What is the current situation for this load center? Well, what we have here is the results of the reliability assessment, which is the model basically models all combinations of failures in the network. Basically, you tell it, okay, if something has a probability of failure less than, let's say, 0.001%, then you can ignore it. Otherwise, consider it. So it runs all of the combinations, single failures and combinations of failures. And then this is what we got, that there is an expected frequency of interruptions of load of 0.24 times per year. Each one would have a duration of, each one when it happens would have a duration of 3 hours. And the expected value, which is the multiplication of these two, is 45 minutes a year. So this load would have an expected interruption in this example of 45 minutes per year, given the cost of then converting that into energy not served, that gave us 400 megawatts of energy not served and a cost. So that was our base cost of analysis. Again, on a real system, these values may be a lot smaller, but I make them high so we could see the impact. And the other aspect that it tells us is that for those minutes per year, that's 45, the lead contributor, and where we should put the box is in the line 171. The other contributor, which is the next place to put the box on, would be the technology park, substation B, which is where the generation was located. And that gives us this total 4576. So that's our benchmark case. That's the case without the data center. Now we build the data center. Well, things get ugly very fast. For the existing load, there was not a significant impact. The expected duration increased from 45 to 47. So yeah, there was an increase in cost for it because there was an increase in energy not served. But look what happened for the data center. Now it has expected duration of 47 minutes per year.
Nelson, there's a question in the chat about whether you're considering both replacement and repair costs or only the repair costs.
In this case, basically what we're considering right now, and we'll be considering of adding assets. In this case, we're not considering aging infrastructure and then upgrading it or replacing it. It's just adding new assets to address the issue. So the case that I presented is a system the case that I'm presenting right now is a system the way it is. And we can see that for the 47 minutes of interruption, 44 minutes are due to the line 171, that line failing, creating an overload somewhere else in the system, and having to shed load to address that overload at the data center. The next would be the technology park sub A. And then there was another substation inside the system that was also responsible for the interruption. So it's basically the system the way it is, and the cost that we're considering is just the cost of adding new assets. For each asset, we're considering its failure rate, its repair time, and also for some assets we consider the maintenance, but typically the maintenance done off-peak. But for example, when we are considering generation, then we typically put there a maintenance period. All right, so that's our situation. We have 47 minutes of interruption because of this large load that we're supplying. Then we're talking about an energy reserve of over 1 gigawatt hour, or $17 million per year of cost to the load for not having these investments.